5, 4, 3, hands on keys, turn. Greetings and felicitations. This is Michael Haspel, and I just got back from the KT Literary Retreat where I had the opportunity to interview a bunch of my fellow writers and my agent, and I would like to bring those interviews to you as quickly as possible. And unfortunately, we were limited in our time, so these interviews ranged between about 10 minutes and 15 minutes, and we just had to get people moving so they could continue writing and take part in activities for the retreat. So they may feel a little bit rushed, but there's a lot of good information in these. And this is the first one with my agent, Sarah Megabo. And Sarah is a literary agent with about 14 years of experience in publishing. She specializes in working with authors in middle grade, young adult, romance, erotica, science fiction, and fantasy. And she represents New York Times bestselling authors Ronnie Lauren and Jason Huff, and international best-selling authors Stefan Bachman and Tiffany Rice. Sarah is LGBTQ friendly and presents regularly at SCBWI, that's the Society for Children's Books Writers and Illustrators, and RWA events around the country. And RWA is the Romance Writers of America. So without further ado, I give you Sarah Megabo. All right, this is Michael Haspel, and welcome to Quantum Froth Dispatches. I'm here today with Sarah Megabo, who, full disclosure, is my agent.
What? Hello, it's good to see you.
It is good
in
to
person.
See you. Yes.
Good to be here. I've been listening to the first couple episodes of QFD, and I'm very impressed.
So you're enjoying the deep dive into Conan the Barbarian?
I'm always enjoying the deep dive into Conan the Barbarian. Thank you.
Okay. And we can just get started right away. I will have read some kind of a small introduction for you, but if you just want to tell people about who you are and what you do and what KT Literary is.
Well, so Michael and I are currently sitting in Scottsdale, Arizona, where it's a balmy 90 degrees during the day and beautiful sunrises, and we're here at a KT Literary Retreat, and I'm looking around the room at lots of very, very talented authors, which is charming. I'm a literary agent. There's 5 literary agents at KT, and we are stationed primarily in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. We have an agent in New York, an agent in Arizona, 3 of us in Colorado. And I am the agent at the agency that does the adult science fiction fantasy, like many of the people I'm seeing around the room, and the romance novels, and middle grade and young adult novels. And I've been working in publishing for almost 13 years now. So that's who I am.
Very cool. So you mentioned we only have one agent in New York.
That is true.
So do you not think that it's a requirement anymore to have folks on, in Manhattan or LA or something like that, like actually boots on the ground?
So that's a good question, and I get that one frequently. Most of my work is done via email, partly because I'm socially awkward, and I don't want to go to cocktail parties because I'm not very good at that. But when I am shopping a manuscript, like Eliza Mann, who I'm looking at right across the table right now, I just email the editors and say, hi, it's Sarah, and I have a manuscript I want to shop. So does someone need to be in New York? Sure, if we want to eat really, really good food. But to do this particular job, no, I don't think so.
Cool.
I think that if an author wants an agent in New York, that's completely legitimate. I am not one of them.
Yeah, excellent. I personally like having you near me. So,
well, thank you.
We can
just so I can buy dinner more often.
Yes, exactly. I'm all about the free food. That's honestly the secret tech is if you want to be a writer, it's not about the writing, it's about the free food.
I thought it was about the booze.
And that.
Okay.
All right, so I have some variation on some canned questions that I have for writers. What do you think is probably the hardest thing about agenting?
That's an excellent question. Also, I think for me, I think if you get 5 agents in a room, you get 6 different answers to that question. So this is just my personal answer. For me, the hardest thing is managing expectations. In that my experience of publishing has been optimistic, robust, positive, exciting, inspiring. And on the other end of the laptop, our authors work so hard, blood, sweat, and tears, opening up a vein, putting those words on the page. And it doesn't always turn into UPS trucks full of money. So for me, I find it challenging sometimes to balance the artistic expression, which is at 110% amazingness, with the financial return, which isn't always at 110% amazingness. And our goal is to get it there financially. It doesn't always happen overnight. Sometimes for some authors, the first book deal is very financially lucrative, and then the next one isn't. Sometimes the first book deal is not financially lucrative, but the sixth might be. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 or 5 books to sell an author. There's so many different experiences, but the financial expectations balancing with the art, for me, I have found that challenging.
Okay. What do you find is the easiest thing about agenting?
Oh, walking into the bookstore and buying all my clients' books.
Yeah.
As my tax accountant would say, because I, of course, have an office with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves stuffed with free books. I mean, I have cartons of free books that show up, and I still spend $3,000 to $4,000 a year on books.
Wow.
Yeah. I have so many copies of Graveyard Shift at home. It's because you do book signings, and I'm going to buy a book, and I'm going to buy a book for a friend, and I'm going to buy another book, and I'm going to buy a book for a Hanukkah gift. And I will tell you, the most amazing housewarming gifts, books. It's an amazing house, and baby shower gifts, books. So I'm always buying my client books. I'm always buying books by agent friends whose clients have just released that I want to read, or I'm buying books of an author who's gotten a great review. I like to buy the really big books each season, and I also like to buy the hidden gems. I spend way too much money on books. That's the easy part, though. I could talk about that for hours.
Yeah. All right. So I have a question for you. Like, if I was a new author trying to query to get an agent,
sure.
What are the really quick do's and don'ts for a query letter or a query email? Now, I don't think anybody's even taking hard copy.
Paper? Yeah, that would be. Paper would be a little bit antiquated at this point. Well, I remember when I met you, it was an aberrant process because you and I met at a conference. And I remember you talking about Graveyard Shift and the vampire and the mummy angle and the cop buddy angle, and me being really excited to read the book. Typically, so I have 45 clients. The vast majority of the clients are queries, what we call query slush pile finds. And so that's publishing speech for a query letter being an introduction email to the manuscript, and slush pile being a publishing speak for all of those query letters that an agent receives. So I would say if we're talking a basic to-do list is for writers to make sure that they are sending those query letters to agents who actually represent the genre of work that they have written. And many starting writers haven't yet clearly identified what genre of work they have written. There's a disconnect sometimes between the art of creating the book and actually getting the book published. And that one of the biggest hurdles is identifying genre. So identify one's genre correctly, then find an agent who represents that genre. And before sending the query letter, read that agent's submission guidelines carefully. For all the agents out there, unfortunately, we have different submission guidelines. So I would say those are the to-dos. Make sure we know what we're writing. Query agents who represent that genre, and follow their submission guidelines. And in terms of don'ts, I don't have a big to-don't list. I find that, I get 25,000 queries a year. The vast majority of them are very, very solid. They're talented authors, they're enthusiastic authors, they're perhaps experienced or perhaps not experienced, but they're talented. So there's not a lot of red flags. No one's going to get chopped out of the query slush pile because they call me Mr. Megabow. Right?
Okay,
I don't have that list.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, and I'm sure people
in case you're querying.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Is there something you need to tell me?
No, we're good. Okay, we're solid. And for folks that don't know, once I saw Sarah in person, there was no other agent. It was what in any other situation it would have been love at first sight. It was just I heard her make some firefly cracks, and I was just like, that's my agent. Yep. Done. All right, so this is a weird question. It may put you on the spot a little bit, but what story influenced you probably the most over your life? Like book, it could be a book, a movie, just anything, like any story.
I would say Blue Sword by Robin McKinley. So I would have been in 4th or 5th grade, and it wasn't called Scholastic Book Fair at my school, but it was called something. And I would go home from school, and I would have that piece of paper with the little tiny scribbles. You can buy this book for 99 cents. And and you could check the box and bring in a quarter and get the book. And my parents allowed me $1. So I was allowed to get 4 books. And one of them was The Blue Sword, and it didn't even have a picture of the cover on it. And I got The Blue Sword, and I got 3 other books, and they came a month later in a little, Ziploc envelope, and they were not even mass market paperbacks, but really, really messy, tiny, small trim paperbacks, and I put them at home, and I didn't read it for a while. And then one night I picked it up, and it's about a girl and a horse and a sword. And immediately in that moment, I knew that all I wanted in my life was stories about girls and horses and swords. And it was very influential, and people have asked me this question before, and it's hard to express, since I'm not a writer, it's hard to express that emotion that I felt, that I still remember feeling 40 years later, of seeing a powerful woman in a fantasy novel be everything that I wanted to be.
Oh,
and that
really
was
cool.
So that was the experience that I had. I didn't feel powerful, and I didn't have a horse, and I most certainly didn't have a sword or any magic, but that's exactly who I wanted to be when I grew up. And so I took to, again, with the social awkwardness, I used to pretend in my head that I had invisible friends, but my invisible friends were all horses. So I would ride my invisible horses through the hallways of my school, in elementary school and in middle school. I did not have a lot of friends, but that's okay. I had books and I had my invisible ponies. And so I would imagine being the heroine, and I would have a sword, and I would have my invisible ponies, and all my invisible ponies had names, and I would gallop through the halls and pretend to slay demons, perhaps into high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And I always imagined that I was dating the beautiful women with their swords, and that we were queens together. So that was my childhood.
And I'm going to ask you another weird question. And so I happen to know you're a big gamer.
Oh, I'm a huge gamer.
So,
tabletop gaming primarily, but also, D&D. Yes.
Do you think that gaming has helped you with agenting, like analyzing stories or anything like that at all?
Well, there's many times that an editor gives me a bad response to something, and I rolled a hit. I think that gaming has influenced many of my clients' storytelling. Jolie Johnson is a big gamer, and she talks about that. And obviously, you and I are both gamers. I think that I see the influence of tabletop gaming and D&D in a lot of my clients' works. In terms of agenting, I would say the thing that has influenced my agenting the most is being married to a musician, because I live this life at home in which my husband's career is influenced by yeses and nos. So I feel like what I try to do is be the kind of agent that I wish his band had when they were starting. And so I try to over-communicate, because, boy, it's so tough to be in a family with a partner who is dependent on the yeses and nos. It's emotionally draining. So I try to overcompensate with my clients by being the person that I wish somebody had been for me 17 years ago, when my husband was out on Pearl Street Mall with a hat. And they would sing for 3 hours, and they would make $35. And he'd come home, and there's 6 of them. And he'd say, we made $35, but I spent $50 on beer.
Wow.
So, no, I don't think gaming has influenced my agenting. I think being married to a musician has influenced my agenting. But I think gaming has definitely influenced many of my clients.
Okay.
At least I hope so.
And we are coming up. We're a little bit past the time, and then we're rushing these because we're going to have a whole lot of people come through, like round robin.
Okay. So anybody who wants, just come up and sit here and maybe say your name. These are all authors who are here at the KT Literary Retreat in Scottsdale, and we've all been eating and drinking and relaxing and sunshining and learning and writing all weekend. And so just a couple people want to come say hi.
I had one more question for you.
Question.
So if you had, and there's another spot one for you.
Okay.
If you had one piece of advice to tell an aspiring writer, what would that be?
I think the advice would be the same for an aspiring writer, that would be for an established writer, that would be for a New York Times bestselling author, is that if possible, focus on one's own career. Don't measure your book against other people's books. Don't measure your career against other people's careers. Don't measure where you are in the process against where other people are in the process. Focus on one's own career. My experience is that writing and publishing each book across a career is different. So to some extent, don't even measure one's own career by what you did last time, but focus on your own career. That would be, I think, for whether the person has just penned the first time they've ever written the end, or whether they're 27 books in. That would be just focus on one's own career.
Okay, excellent.
That's what I think.
Thank you very much. You have been listening to Quantum Froth Dispatches by Michael Haspel. Music and other cues are provided by The Fat Rat. The song you're hearing is Monody, featuring Laura Brem. If you would like to support the podcast, please visit www.patreon.com/QFD. Thank you for listening, and we now return you to your mundane reality.